Hi everyone, my name's Adrian and I'm a fresh grad from Monash and I'm majored in medicinal chemistry with a minor in tropical environmental biology. And I recently just graduated like a few months ago and I took this unit, SCI3990, about a year ago in my first semester of third year. And here's my take on why I should consider and take on this unit. So I'm going to start off with my experience with the research unit. Basically, my thesis is on detection for nitrite ion using a spectrometer approach. So I was studying on ionic sensors using ionic liquid. So I was using ionic liquid to detect like nitrite ion in water to apply this within the water sanitation industry. So there are two main components within my thesis, which is the wet lab and the computational aspect. So what I did in my wet lab experience. For the lab experience, I did a lot of dilution, serial dilution. I had to prepare a lot of stock solution for like nitrite solution, and I was working with three different ionic liquids. So I had to have different dilution factors for each of the ionic liquid. So I was working a lot with dilution and just making stock solution. So using that with the equipment UV-vis spectra. So that's what I mainly did for wet lab. I had to do a lot of serial dilution and testing with UV-vis. And moving on to my second part, which is the computational aspect, that was a really fun experience because I get to 3D model the molecule that I was working with, which is the ionic liquid. And I'll use that to simulate how it would interact with different anions. So I worked it with bromide ion and nitrite ion. So we get to test the interactions between ionic liquid and those two anions. It's a really fun experience. You get to play around with molecules, you get to simulate them, just get to design. That was a really fun experience. So yeah, and I was doing this under the intention or impression of like the SDG, Sustainable Developmental Goals 6, which is clean sanitation for all. So that is what I was doing my thesis topic under the impression of. Okay, I'm going to move on with what is expected from me while I started this research. So I was working alongside with Dr. Irene. She was my supervisor. And first of all, we need to plan out what are we expected out from our 12 weeks of research. What do we want to test and what do we want to find out? So we need to find out our goals, our problem statement, things like that. And through ourselves, we'll need to do a lot of reading, a lot of researching. So from thesis component, they are mainly like separated into two. First is the lit review, which you don't really need your results part to write. So you start off with your lit review. From there, you will study and read up a lot about your own topic, and that's where you learn a lot about what you're actually getting into. Because as an undergrad, you wouldn't really know most of the topic that you're doing. You'll have the base knowledge of understanding, but in depth and finding out what they really are, that's where the lit review comes in, and that's where your research skill and reading really comes into play. So that's the main part. And moving on to that, we have to have a lot of time management and organizational skill. Because I was doing with 3 other laboratory units at the time so it was 4 in total. It was a lot to juggle, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. So with planning and time management, it's like coming into lab, you need to think like, okay, how big is my research and how much time I'll need to go into the lab to get the results I want and to write up from that. So you need, especially I already said that I work with a lot of dilution factors. I needed to do a lot of calculation. And my first few weeks, I kind of struggled because like I will come into lab and that's where I start doing my calculation. And that takes up a lot of my time. And I ended up being in the lab just a short while for doing my testing. And I'll spend most of it doing my calculation instead. So one tip is that do all your planning for your testing the night before. It will save you a lot of time and you can get your results way faster. And yeah. And second of all, while you're running your own experiment, a lot of problems or your results wouldn't be consistent, or it will come out a problem. It will not be what you expected it to be. And that's okay. That is where the whole research component comes in. And that is where you need to troubleshoot. So your result is not consistent, it's not ideal. You will need to jump back to the drawing board, you will need to plan again and again. And that takes up a lot of time. And those are the time that you don't see it coming, and they'll just come up unexpectedly. So time management really plays an important role as a third year student here, because you have 3 other units to juggle with. You need to study, you have like mid-sem tests and things like that, your reports, and yeah, you really need to like know how to plan when to do what and what you need to do when you're in the lab. So no time wasting, and so and yeah, besides that, I think communication is one of the skills that you really learn how to adapt it well, especially in the field of research, because you think that, okay, I'm only talking to my supervisor and I'm working in the lab myself alone. But that's not the case. You're working alongside with a lot of lab technicians. In my case, I was working alongside with Mr. Shafiq, Miss Halimatun, and Miss Halina. They all helped me in my research in ways that like you would never thought of. When you go to your usual lab classes, things are already prepared for you. Everything is there, the step is there. You will know what to do. But in this case, in the research, you need to like source everything out independently. You need to find out like, hey, where can I find this chemical? Where do I get this equipment from? And that is where your communication and independent skill really come into place. You need to be very like resourceful and go find people around the science building, the lab. I was like, hey, where can I get this from? And like just running around. So yeah, communication, that's an important skill. And that sums up most of my experience in research. And moving on, I think like a lot of students will ask like, hey, I actually don't see myself being in academia or research in the future. And I would like to, go into the industry after I graduate. Should I take this unit or not? Is it useful? Personally, yes, I feel like it's very useful. You should take it, even though if you're just going to the industry, you're not going back to academia or whatsoever. Because you learn a lot of transferable skills. Like previously I've already mentioned, your time management, your planning skill, communication skill, and your resources allocation. Those come into big play that you can transfer into your working life. And working in research, you troubleshoot a lot by yourself and with your supervisor. So that gives you like problem solving skill, and you're working a lot with data, you get a lot of results. You need to filter it through, and yeah, those are all transferable skills into the industry and you can apply them, and that is your selling point as a fresh grad to companies. Like, why should they hire you? And like, oh, I did research before, and through my experience in research, I've learned all this. And the outcome from research is that not only I found my thesis, what is it about, what can it do, where can I apply it to, but also you learn about yourself and what's the outcome of this 3 months research of like, how did I grow as a student and what did I learn and how can I transfer and apply this to my future life, like industry. So yeah, you should take it, even though if you don't think you'll come back to the academia or research life. Highly recommendable, so yes. And lastly, I just want to share some interesting part of this unit is like, You get to see the background of working in the lab. You get to talk to a lot of the lab technician that you usually wouldn't even notice. You go into the lab, things are prepared for you, like I said. You wouldn't know who were the one who prepared for it. And so, but being in a research field, you get to meet all these people and you get to appreciate what they do for you as an undergrad. And you see that, you notice that, and like, okay, there's this whole background scene behind my lab classes, and you just have a deeper sense of appreciation towards them and toward the lab classes. And lastly, I think having the collaborative experiences with your lecturer is a really fun perspective, because usually in classes they are giving you lectures, they're giving you lessons, and you're just sitting there taking it in. You know, it's a teacher student kind of dynamic. Whereas in research, you work alongside with them, and it's a very different perspective, because even though they are your lecturer, they are doing this research like a novel research. They will have the expertise of it, but they wouldn't know the outcome and the results of it. And they are still studying, they're still learning. And you're learning and studying alongside with them doing this research, and sometimes they don't know everything, but you as a student, you need to troubleshoot all these like unexpected problems, and they also don't know, they don't have all the answers to the problems that you are facing. So working alongside with them give them a new perspective of like, wow, I'm working alongside my lecturer, and it's not like a teaching and student kind of experience. So it's a really fun learning experience from there, and the insights that they give you through like years long worth of teaching and being in research field, it's a really insightful experience, and just really teach you how to structure your thinking in the academia or studies. So yeah, this is why I think you should go for SCI3990, because really enjoyed my time there, and you learn a lot. And yeah, good luck with anything that you're doing, your research. So